The highlight of my job, I will have to say, is meeting and working and collaborating with my good friend and colleague, Richard Messina. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
We're thrilled that you could be here today to talk with us a little bit about inquiry-based teaching and learning. You are a master inquiry-based teacher and researcher. You have almost 20 years, or over 20 years, of practice in elementary education in many different capacities. And I'd like it if you could share with us a little bit of background on your practical experience as a teacher, as a university researcher, and as a vice principal of the Dr. Eric Jackman Institute of Child Study Lab School.
Oh, it would be a pleasure. It's wonderful to be here with you, Cheryl. I was a public school teacher for 7 years in the public school system. I taught grade 1 up to grade 8 in various settings. And I saw an ad and responded to an advertisement to be a seconded teacher at a laboratory school. And so applied and got accepted to be the 4th grade teacher here. It was, the ad asked for someone to be a teacher researcher. And that was a new concept for me. I had never really considered myself as a researcher, and I was immediately immersed in this wonderful culture of teaching and critically analyzing our teaching and reflecting. I was involved in knowledge building projects here, the research work of Marlene Scardomalia and Carl Bereiter. And after teaching grade 4 for 5 years, and then I moved to grade 5-6, I became the vice principal and was able to really facilitate the inquiry work that was happening on a school-wide level. I've been the vice principal now for 7 years, and most recently I have applied and been accepted to be the principal of the school, so I'm looking forward to continuing.
Could you give us a little bit of an understanding of the workings of this environment, the lab school itself?
Laboratory school exists at the University of Toronto to explore what's possible in education. Okay. Our history is that we began as an early childhood education center with the very youngest children, and we've expanded up to 6th grade. So we now work with children who are 3 years old up to 6th graders. And it's sort of a mandate is to we have a public purpose. Right. All the work we do is for the benefit of public schools and public school children. We are affiliated with the teacher training program here, a teacher education program, an MA program. We are active in producing research as well. And we are asked to provide exemplary education to the 200 children that are in the building and disseminate our findings. And we have about 1,000 visitors who come to us each year, and we welcome more visitors if anyone is interested. Our goal for our graduates is for the children to have deep knowledge, deep content knowledge of the areas of the curriculum that we would like them to encounter, and have deep knowledge of who they are as a learner and what the learning process is. We're interested in educating children. It's almost become a cliche now for the 21st century, this sense of children are going to be working in a world where it's not so much accessing information, but what to do with the information, how to assess whether or not the information is legitimate, usable, authentic. And we want to give children experiences of collaboratively working together towards idea improvement.
How would you characterize inquiry? What does it look like? What does it feel? What does it sound like?
Thank you. There's an expression that sometimes fish are the last to notice the water around them. And it's so wonderful to have so many visitors come and tell us what they see when they are actually in the building. There are a lot of misconceptions about inquiry, so maybe I'll start by saying what inquiry is not. It's not discovery learning. No. It's not abandoning children or waiting for them to discover that electricity is one electron jumping from one atom to the next. That, of course, there is some transmission of information. In a nutshell, inquiry for us comes from John Dewey, who over 100 years ago wrote about how children learn best. He said that the direct transmission of information, of beliefs and ideas, is an ineffective way of learning. And that doesn't honor the child. The child comes to us with incredibly sophisticated ideas, explanations of the world around them. So inquiry honors what children know, and it invites them into a process of investigating, continuing that investigation, continuing what's natural to individuals. For us, inquiry is about having ideas at the center of a classroom, and that changes the role of a teacher. It means that we are constantly reminding children and focusing their attention on what we are doing, why we are doing it, and negotiating with them how we're going to assess that we know that we have understanding.
Okay.
Inquiry is not a set of procedures.
Okay.
It's a set of principles, and one of the principles that really speaks to me is this idea of idea improvement. We want children to realize that all ideas are improvable, and our goal as a community is to recognize the theories, the ideas we have, and that together we are going to go deeper to understand and change our ideas, improve those ideas. Inquiry is a different way of learning. Often when we think of learning, we think of the individual in a solitary act. And for me, it's much more a collective, the sense that we have it's a collective responsibility for us to develop a community's knowledge. And so I'm learning not just for myself, but for the sake of the community. In my early years, I was a fan of project-based learning. The flaw with project-based learning is that we have absolutely children working in interest groups. That part is great. But the sharing happens way too late.
Yes.
And then we move on to something else, and it's that sharing day when all those rich discussions and connections and questions come. In a knowledge-building classroom or in an inquiry-based learning classroom, that sharing is happening at all times, simultaneously.
Yeah.
So that children have this depth of understanding and a breadth of understanding as well. And the next principle I want to talk about is that it's an authentic learning experience as well. That children have a deep desire to want to learn more because they're invested in it. It meets their interest and their needs.
How do teachers really implement this? What is important and relevant to the elementary teacher in order to understand what's going on within the classroom, both recognizing subject content proficiencies and then also understanding sort of that dynamic that happens within the classroom, the patterns of interaction?
There's no question that the role of teacher has changed.
Yeah.
And we absolutely need to be proficient in the content areas that we're teaching children, and we have to be proficient in pedagogy, understanding how children learn. But the teacher also needs to be in an inquiry mood as well, an inquiry state of mind.
Mode, yeah.
Mode, thank you, yes. Where the teacher realizes that I don't have all the answers, and that I know what the big ideas are that I want the children to understand and unpack. I don't necessarily know the exact path we're going to take to those big ideas. And that I'm open to their contribution, because every cohort is different, every group of children, and the teacher should be different every year. A deeper understanding of pedagogy, and I strongly believe a deeper understanding of the content as well. Even though, you may know enough mathematics or enough science as a grade 3 teacher, as a starting point, if your understanding of that area doesn't deepen, then there's something I feel fundamentally wrong there. You should understand more deeply, what are the misconceptions children have? What are great ways of addressing those misconceptions that can stick? And there have been many charts, many posters about inquiry that I come across, and often what happens is that teachers take that information as a recipe to follow. So I will invite children to ask questions, I write down those questions, and then I don't actually know what to do with those questions. Or I listen for children's theories, I record those theories, and then I go on and give them a handout, or we go look at the textbook. So for me, I feel that the role of the teacher, first of all, is to listen to children. If we think of the primary sense a teacher needs to have in the 21st century, it's listen. What do children already know? What are children interested in? What are their questions? What are their misconceptions? Listen and archive that. record all that information down. Inquiry can't be separated from assessment.
Okay.
We are assessing for at all times. So formative assessment, assessment as, and of course ultimately assessment of.
So after they've done that, then what?
So I feel we need to back up though. The teacher needs to understand what are the big ideas, what are the goals that we want the children to unpack. And we then invite children in. There are many ways. You might have an experience. You might go on a field trip. You might read something. You want to maybe have an experiment, some kind of an experience that will generate a connection for children, that will allow them to wonder, which they naturally do, wonder and ask questions, and you are inviting this in and recording this information. And you present it back to the students to say, now, what do we do with this? Look at all these wonderful theories. Can we test out some of these theories? Can you design a way to test these out? I can design a way to test that, so that the children are active in the design of what needs to happen next. That they understand the mission statement. Maybe that's an outdated term. They understand the goal, the focus. It's transparent. We want to learn how light travels. We want to learn why leaves change colors in the fall. And so that children can understand why we're doing what we're doing. And what I've found, what teachers need to do, and this is not easy, is release agency onto children.
Yes.
Trust that children can decide what needs to happen next. This does not mean, again, discovery learning where the teacher walks away. The teacher absolutely is preparing lessons, preparing materials, to get the children, facilitate the learning, absolutely. But there is time for children to grapple with these ideas, to think about, well, I've just learned about this theory, but now let me play with this theory. It's not about getting to understanding as quickly as possible. But I feel that as teachers, well-intentioned teachers, we want to bring children to the correct answers as soon as possible. And we almost put blinders on children so that we can avoid the distractions. Again, I feel this does a disservice to children, because as they grow up, life is not, as simple as that. There's superfluous information, there's conflicting information. They need experiences with dealing with idea diversity. As a teacher, this was very scary. If you had come to me many years ago and said, I'd like you to teach in this way, I'd think, are you kidding? I like to know what's in the teacher's manual. It's so nice to have uniformity in the class, every child working on the same experiment at the same time. That serves my needs as a teacher better than it serves their needs as a learner. It allows me to know who's on task, but it doesn't allow us to create a community where there's discourse. There's no need for children to talk to each other. They're only talking to me, proving that they've understood that concept in a superficial way. Instead, I'm trying to create an environment where children need to talk to other children, because some children have been playing with lenses, and some children have been playing with mirrors, and some children have been identifying how animals and humans actually see light, and that coming together they have these aha moments.
Maybe 2 examples of like a narrative of inquiry, and maybe if you could focus on either K to 3 as one example, and then a 4 to 6 grade level example.
A story I'd like to tell is a story of a grade 1 class a few years ago that was told to me and had a huge impact on me as a teacher. Teacher was Patty, and she was the first grade teacher, and she had talked about how the children were very interested in why leaves change colors.
Yes.
And so Patty, knowing that this connected to the curriculum and the theme, the overriding concept of cycles that the grade 1 curriculum connected to, asked the children, well, you tell me what you think. And she accepted all these wonderful theories from the children, half-baked ideas for some, or things that children have been thinking about for all the years, that they've been formulating their theories. Things like, tired of wearing green, the color dripped off at night, something to do with the cold, fairies painting them, maybe related to God. And then there was the child who said this is because chlorophyll is no longer being produced and photosynthesis is stopped for this cycle, and the stoma part of the cell leaf is blocked. But Patty wasn't waiting for that answer. She accepted that answer the same way she accepted all of them, with enthusiasm, and she recorded those theories. But she didn't end there, because simply sharing our ideas is the starting point. And then she said to the students, these are wonderful, wonderful theories. Maybe we should categorize them. And maybe she cut them up. I don't quite remember this, but children could have, she's sort of making their thinking visible in a way, tangible, that they can sort it. And then she said, well, I wonder if some of these theories can be tested. I wonder if and invited the children to be designers and test out, and somebody placed a leaf in a freezer and somebody else next to a radiator, and you can imagine.
An authentic scientist.
Authentic scientists, and they were bringing in resources from the library, going on field trips. And the children, as they acquired new information, they started to acquire more questions. Because then it was, well, chlorophyll has something to do with this. Well, where is the chlorophyll stored in the winter? And they would go deeper, and they went as far as they possibly could. And what I like about that is that she was able to trace for them the story of their learning. This is where we started. These are the original theories we had. And this is how the ideas evolved. And some of these theories we were able to test out. And we weren't able to answer all our questions. We ran out of time, or it was beyond our understanding or our access to technology. But the most impactful part of the story is that she told us that months later, she went to a maple sugar bush and with the class as a field trip, and she was with a small group of children that she was supervising, and a child saw sap coming out of one of the maple trees and said, oh my goodness, my theory is wrong. And she said, well, what do you mean? And he said, remember when we were trying to figure out where chlorophyll was stored in the winter, I drew a picture in my lab book, I think, about tubes inside the trunk of a tree. Well, if that theory were correct, the sap coming out should be dark green, and it isn't. So we need to correct that, and we need to let everyone else know. When Patty shared that story to me as another teacher in the school, it really crystallized something for me. Sort of three things. One, I was so impressed that although that unit was over months ago, it was still so alive for that child. He was still grappling. And isn't that what we want children to do? To continue to think and wonder about things. Not to segment learning into a schedule, but really have children continue to want more. Secondly, the child said, I've made a mistake and I want to correct it. And there was no embarrassment there. Idea improvement. The child recognized that. And then thirdly, he said, we need to let everybody else know too. We're in a small group here. Understanding already this idea of the need for everyone else to know this so that they can revise their ideas as well. So that is sort of a grade 1 example. I can sort of speak about a grade. Let's talk about
4 or
grade.
6.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe something that you actually.
Oh, something I did. I mean,
one of the things you
liked
actually.
was something that was something I taught. So what I would often do is we would have readings. We would have children choose which of the readings, rather than everyone be on the same page at the same time. Children would identify, and I would invite children to bring in their own readings as well. I also invited children to do experiments that I designed or have them design experiments, and constantly we were sharing what we were discovering, and that would shape our focus for the next class. Now, this is what we want to know. We want to know what makes, how does light travel, or how do animals see, or what are the, how does light interact with objects? And so that there was this transparency. We used things like lab books. We used Knowledge Forum, a database for us to record our theories and our questions. The entire room became a way to make their thinking visible with chart papers and post-it notes. But it was this way where you would imagine, I mean, I've never worked for Google or, but I would imagine that in a creative organization, this is it. It's a sort of a democratic way of sharing information on an ongoing basis, and there's this energy that is created because new information is coming from many sources, and the teacher just being one of those sources. Okay. And then as a group we would figure out how are we going to assess our understanding, how will we know what we know, and what we need to do next in this journey. And again, as the teacher, I held this notion of, they're not addressing this aspect of light. So I would introduce that. There's no problem doing that, but giving children the time to really play with these ideas.
how does technology impact the elementary classroom? And then we can, of course, move that through. How does technology facilitate a better inquiry experience?
I'm really encouraged by technology. I feel that we're coming very close to a point where the technology will actually shape the way we can act as a community, as an idea-generating community, that we can't help but think of ways to share information by using technology that are going to be built upon, where we can share ideas, where we can express ourselves in many ways. And we've come such a long way. And you're absolutely right. You mentioned many times that children they have an intuitive sense with technology when it's designed well, if we think of all the smart technology that's out there. So in the end, for me, technology is allowing children, any user, to communicate, to contribute, and to receive information. So it also opens the classroom to beyond the walls of the classroom as well. To have a space where children could write a note, text of a note, contribute to that note. I was so intrigued by the fact that you didn't save the note, but you contributed it to the database, and that you were asked what, to give it a title. So this idea of the synthesizing mind, how am I going to call this? And I can't simply call it light, because everyone's note is about light in this database. So really having children be thinkers and really think about how to synthesize that information. And then I realized how the scaffold supports and shapes the way thinking can happen, where children they're not pretending to be scientists. They are scientists when they say, this is my theory. I need to understand. I need evidence to support this. What was the count of, what's the data here? What is the source of this information? With those sorts of triggers embedded in the technology, it really helps to shape the way children contribute. And I also love the fact that we have a problem with technology in the sense that it's so easy to plagiarize without even understanding that we're taking from one source and claiming it. And sometimes we're able to take from one child's note into another and actually honor that, the source that it came from. So really, I could tell that the children are able to go much deeper in an inquiry, much deeper in their understanding because of the technology. And in fact, I also would use the technology to assess. I had children look at their vocabulary, look at how many notes they read. Also, they were able to look at who they connected to, whose notes did they read, what did this tell us? And again, it was to make what is normally invisible visible to students. Let them have that meta experience as a contributor to this idea improvement exercise, so that they can see what their role is. They could also give feedback to the community so that we could meet the goals of the community.
There are challenges with technology, and if you could maybe highlight one example of technology in sort of this inquiry space gone awry.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about technology as being intuitive, but it's not necessarily reliable. And we know that systems crash and the server isn't working, and you may have planned a wonderful opportunity for learning to occur, and you need to move to plan B. So that is sort of the given that we've all experienced, and I guess you just need to embrace that. That the potential for that can occur at any time, and great teachers know how to sort of compromise and find alternative methods. For me, technology, we can't be blinded by technology. It can't be that simply having the shiny equipment is enough. And sometimes I visit classrooms and people will show the smart board technology and laptops, but they're not necessarily using them in ways that are progressive. They're still, the teacher as the sole authority source or information provider in the classroom, and rather than a blackboard, now it's a smart board, or it's being transmitted, and it looks different, but it actually is still transmission of information. So we have to just be careful about the bells and whistles, as I
Right.
often refer to, of technology, and make sure that it's actually augmenting the learning, not getting in the way of the learning.
If you had to give all our participants one piece of advice, one tool, one activity that you'd want to give an elementary school teacher on inquiry, what would it be?
One piece of advice, I would say start small. Start small in one area, one strand of one subject matter of the curriculum, and give yourself the freedom to really explore what's possible with children, and trust the children. Trust that they can meet the expectations and that you can help bring them to those expectations. That would be my advice. For me, it was science, and I've given you many examples of science, but soon the way I was teaching science impacted the way I taught mathematics, the way I taught spelling, the way I did novel studies. It started to permeate in my practice, but that would be my advice. I would recognize that change is difficult. No one likes change. And that in order to change, we have to fear not changing more than the unknown, than the change that we're going to experience. And so I'm not asking you to work harder, because you already work very, very hard. I'm asking you to work smarter, more effectively. And that means that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. It's a little bit about really this understanding how children learn, understanding what inquiry looks like, and then investigating technologies that can support that. And then once that happens, it actually is easier. It actually, your role changes, and it actually becomes a joyful process. So again, it's not more work, it's a different kind of work.
Yeah. So as we head off into our journeys together, and it is together, and that's what makes it exciting. We hope you have incredible technology-enhanced inquiry lessons ahead of you, and we hope to see some of those wonderful things in future episodes.